The villagers of Salem, a town amidst a witch panic, live in constant fear now that the witch trials have begun. John Alden returns to town after 7 years at war and is surprised to find his lady love, Mary, married to George Sibley, the richest man in town. As Reverend Cotton Mather, town outcast Isaac Watson, and John join forces to uncover the truth about witches, the captain suspects that Magistrate Hale is not who he seems. With the deaths of Giles Corey and Bridget Bishop, the skeptics continue to doubt the accuracy of identifying the so-called witches in town. Unbeknownst to John, Mary harbors a dark secret about power she obtained, sacrificing her and John's unborn child to the Dark Lord. While Anne Hale and Captain John Alden are sharing a passionate kiss in bed, Reverend Cotton Mather and Mary Sibley join them after speaking about war and love. Overwhelmed and frightened, Anne orders them to stop, but it turns out that all of it was just a bad dream. Anne washes her face in front of the mirror, only to see that her eyes have turned black, an illusion created by Mary's hex doll on top of her dresser. Shaken by the strange sight, she wipes her face with a washcloth and then sees that her eyes are back to normal. As she confusedly walks towards the window, the cursed doll turns its head, following her. That morning, the Salem villagers join Isaac as he transports the latest accused and hanged witch's body to the crag, the burial place for the unwanted. As Isaac carries the unfairly persecuted midwife Bridget, he sincerely assures her that those who weep for her passing outnumber those who don't. Meanwhile, Mary watches the event from the balcony, and Tituba tells her that she might want to pay Isaac more to take a longer route, since some people may still doubt Bridget's guilt. Seconds later, Mary speaks with Cotton, whom she advises to guide and support the Salem townsfolk and assure them that it's God's will to get rid of the evil plaguing Salem. As Mary walks back to her house, Magistrate Hale tells her that some people are still in doubt regarding Bridget's persecution. Mary says that the success of a witch panic depends on how bad it gets, and she tells them to look for their next target because the grand rite has started. Hale tries to oppose Mary's ruthless plan, but she asks if he already knows who broke their circle the night of the Sabbath, prompting him to follow up with Petrus, the seer he tasked to identify the witness's identity. As Cotton walks with the townspeople, John asks him how he feels about successfully taking Giles Corey and Bridget Bishop's innocent lives. However, their conversation is interrupted when they hear Anne screaming from the orphanage. John rushes to the orphanage and shoots at the ceiling to scare away the thieves. Seconds later, Cotton and Hale arrive, but the distraught Anne blames them both, implying that the crime happened because of Bridget's persecution. She then tells John to escort her home. Anne asks John where Bridget's body will be taken, and he answers that she will be thrown into the crag, a terrible place. The heartbroken Anne thanks the captain for his candor and heroism. From a distance, Mary observes them suspiciously from her balcony. Hale goes to Petrus's home to find out who broke their circle. The blind man reveals that the witness has an F scorched on him. Hale is shocked to learn that it was Isaac, but he's even more surprised when Petrus reveals that Isaac wasn't alone. However, the seer admits that he wasn't able to identify the other witness. After seeing Hale leave Petrus's house, the suspicious John sneaks into the turf, where he sees strange stuffed animals. Suddenly, a dog he thinks is stuffed as well attacks him, but Hale saves him. The magistrate reveals that the shack belongs to Petrus, a creature expert, but the doubtful John wonders why he needed the man's counsel. Meanwhile, in the Sibley residence, George tries to make himself throw up the familiar, but Mary tells him that the familiar answers only to her. Suddenly, Tituba walks in to inform Mary that Isaac has brought the master's potions. In their quick conversation, Isaac reveals to Mary that his girlfriend, Abigail Cook, disappeared the day after their public trial. Mary assures him that if he ever sees Abigail again, his feelings will be too buried to resurrect. Shortly after leaving Mary's home, an ugly witch puts a sack over Isaac's head and takes him to the crag, where he performs witchcraft on him. Suddenly, the pig man Isaac saw in the woods questions what he witnessed and who he was with. However, despite the torment, Isaac lies, insisting he was alone. While Isaac is unconscious, Hale instructs the hesitant witch to remove the traces of their witchcraft from him and then puts a witch's item in his pocket to frame him. At the divining rod, Cotton spends the night with the courtesan Gloriana Embry, who worries about her fate after Bridget's persecution. He assures her that she's protected as long as she's not a witch. A commotion downstairs interrupts the couple, and they see the women running away in fear as Isaac attacks them. After Cotton gets dressed, he re-enters the brothel as a respectable reverend and tries to calm Isaac down. However, the cursed man runs amok in the streets and tells the townsfolk to hide their wives. When he runs into John, Isaac tells him that they were seen in the woods. The captain shushes him before Hale arrives to arrest him. Mary confronts Hale for carrying out decisions without her consent, but the magistrate reveals that Isaac and an unidentified witness saw them in the woods. She then instructs him not to do anything further. In the jailhouse, Cotton talks to John, sharing his uncertainty about whether Isaac is just under a spell, or a witch himself due to the object obtained from him. Then, Dr. Lamb comes out and informs them that Isaac is well and has been put to sleep, and that he can be interrogated the next morning. In the woods, Mary speaks with Rose Browning, who mentions there's a divide between new and old witches. The old witch warns that she shouldn't underestimate Hale, who has seen much and suffered greatly. As Mary walks in Salem, John joins her and convinces her that Isaac is not a witch. Knowing that the prisoner hasn't been questioned yet, Mary tells the captain that he has her complete allegiance. Later that night, Cotton is confused as he witnesses Isaac talking to an invisible entity. Mary put a spell on Isaac, and she pretends to be Abigail to get him to tell her who the other witness is. After learning that the other witness is John, Mary immediately breaks the spell and falls onto her bed. The next morning, Mary visits Hale in his home and tells him that Isaac was indeed alone in the woods. A doubtful Hale notes that Isaac's persecution will be voted on by the selectmen. However, Mary is adamantly opposed to this and will do anything to stop it. But the magistrate points out that she needs to keep her emotions in check because they will need a victim for the grand rite. In prison, Cotton asks Isaac to inquire about the witch item in his possession, but the prisoner argues that the witches must have planted it on him after learning he was a witness. When Cotton asks him what happened in the brothel, Isaac can't recall what he did. Meanwhile, Mary urges John to stop Hale, who's preparing to force a vote and hang Isaac. Still mourning over her friend Bridget's unjust trial, Anne angrily confronts her father about why he rushes out to persecute another. Anne's mother cautions her to find an avenue to use her voice, rather than yelling at her father. When Hale speaks to John by the prison, he breaks the news that Isaac will undergo trial. In spite of John's protests, the magistrate gives the order to take the prisoner. In the Sibley residence, Mary cooks up a plan to stop the magistrate. She then controls the doll in Anne's dresser. As Anne brushes her hair, she notices the doll move around the room. Seeing it on her bed and slowly turning its head, Anne leans against the mirror in shock. She turns and sees her black eyes in the reflection. All of a sudden, she falls to the ground, gasping for air, with blood coming out of her mouth. Back in the jailhouse, Cotton releases Isaac so he can help John attack Hale's men. Suddenly, someone interrupts the commotion and informs the magistrate about Anne's fit. When the magistrate returns home, he recognizes Mary's doll and realizes what's happened. He flees to Mary's house and begs for his daughter's life, telling her that Isaac can live if she spares his daughter. Mary removes the spell from Anne, and as she gets better, Hale immediately goes to the prison to release Isaac, saying he's just a drunkard, not a witch. Before leaving his cell, Isaac thanks John for saving his life and adds that no one has stood up for him before. Cotton then visits Gloriana to tell her the good news. The courtesan suggests that they leave Salem and start over, but the Reverend responds that he is doing well, and Gloriana assures him that his father is proud of him. Later, Mary warns John that while they may have been fortunate with Isaac, they might lose the next ones. That same day, Isaac goes to the brothel and offers flowers to the head courtesan as an apologetic gesture. In the Sibley residence, Mary picks up her unfinished knitted pieces and realizes that something is missing. In another room, George Sibley holds Mary's missing knitting needle and uses it to pierce his thigh. Meanwhile, despite the threat of persecution, Reverend Lewis uses Catholic exorcism on his bewitched daughter, Mercy. He uses a dagger to cut her stomach open, letting out a snake familiar that has been keeping her under Mary's control. The next morning, William Hook arrives in Salem and heads to the dock to get a parcel from an incoming ship. However, a militiaman tells him that Mary Sibley has ordered the ship to be quarantined because of an influenza outbreak. On the Sibley balcony, Mary tells George that her next innocent victim might be his blacksmith friend, and she plans to control Mercy to accuse him of witchcraft. When John goes to visit his parents' grave, Anne suddenly appears and apologizes for intruding. Hearing that she had fallen ill, John inquires about her health, and she shares a story about her feverish dream where Hale removed the doll that was staring back at her. John becomes suspicious, prompting Anne to ask if he questions his father's veracity. Suddenly, Hale interrupts their conversation and escorts Anne home. In the tavern, John thinks that Anne's illness is a witch's work, surprising Cotton that the captain finally believes in witches. John then declares his plan to apprehend one, whom he suspects to be Magistrate Hale. Meanwhile, Gloriana is flirting with a strange man, which catches Cotton's attention and prompts him to interrupt the couple. As John restrains the enraged Reverend, he recognizes that the strange man is William, an acquaintance who knows his dark past. As William walks away, Cotton asks John if he recognizes him, but John pretends he's never seen the man before. When Mary and Tituba visit the market, they run into a recovering Mercy and her father, prompting Mary to act on her plan to frame the innocent blacksmith. Mary tries to control Mercy, but eventually realizes that she's no longer under her power. Later, the witches huddle in the woods about the grand rite. Hale questions Mary as she was unsuccessful in framing the blacksmith, but she assures him that her mastery is not an issue and that Mercy just needs some rest. Hale raises another issue, John's suspicious gaze toward him. The magistrate warns Mary that if she cannot abate John Alden, he'll have to do something about it. Rose then advises the magistrate to earn the captain's trust. Upon her return to Salem, Mary pays Cotton a visit and reprimands him for neglecting Mercy, who collapsed in the market. The Reverend claims that there's no proof that she's under a witch's grasp, but Mary reminds him of his purpose to hunt the witches down. In the pub, Hale meets John and informs him that a reception has been planned to commemorate his appointment to the Selectmen's board. As the magistrate confirms John's attendance, the captain suddenly excuses himself and follows William outside to confront him about his arrival in Salem. After William admits he's in town on business, John reminds him that they made a deal during the war to never see each other again. To speed up his departure, William asks John to help him talk to Mary Sibley, but the captain tells him to stay away from his former lover. However, William threatens to ruin John's good name by revealing his past. The intimidated captain tells him to immediately flee the town after finishing his business in Salem. Unbeknownst to the two men, Tituba has been eavesdropping the whole time. Meanwhile, after Mary leaves to go to the reception, George again pierces his thigh using the knitting needle and uses it to write something on paper. On her way to the reception, Mary runs into William, who tries to convince her to grant him access to the quarantine ship so he can get his parcel. Unfortunately, the suspicious Mary refuses and asserts that no one is permitted on board. That same evening, Cotton visits Mercy Lewis to find out who her tormentor is. Suddenly, he smells agrimony, an exorcism herb, and confronts Reverend Lewis, who claims the apothecary suggested it. After seeing Mercy's belly wound, Cotton realizes that Reverend Lewis has practiced Catholic exorcism. Mary arrives at the reception and meets Anne, who unknowingly wears a protective necklace that her father gifted her. When Mary touches the pendant, her fingers burn, and she realizes that Hale used valerian root, a witch-repelling herb. When she talks to the magistrate about it, Hale says that he needs to make sure his family is safe. As Mary jealously watches Anne flirt with John, Cotton arrives and isolates Mary to tell her that Mercy is finally free from her possessor. But when Mary finds out that a Catholic exorcism was done, she tells Cotton that he was wrong to let it happen, saying that a Catholic is worse than a witch. After Hale introduces John as the new selectman, the captain takes the floor to theorize that witches could be among the trusted leaders, subtly hinting that it could be someone on the board. Hale and Mary, who are guilty, try not to react, but John shifts the energy after saying that he hopes no one is, since he's part of the board now. A disappointed Cotton returns to the church, where Gloriana confronts him about his protective gesture in the tavern. However, he takes advantage of her and then throws coins on her as she weeps. Meanwhile, William sneaks into the Sibley residence in the hopes of speaking with George, but the immobile man instead hands him a note with "witch" written on it in blood. Before John leaves the reception, Hale tries to earn his trust by telling him that Anne was spelled 2 days ago, and worries that his daughter might be the witch's next target. Instead of believing the statement, John's suspicions grow, and he tells the magistrate that Salem will find out his dirty secret as soon as he finds proof. When Mary returns home, Hook confronts her with George's note, threatening her he'll give it to the selectman if he's not given access to the ship. Left with no choice, Mary agrees and tells him to retrieve his parcel at midnight. After Mary throws George's note in the fireplace, Tituba suspects that her decision could get them in trouble. Mary tells her that Mercy can get them in trouble too, and she wants to reinsert the familiar in her body again. Tituba asks her to move quickly with the plan while she takes care of William. Meanwhile, William walks deep into the woods to meet Rose, who tasked him with obtaining the parcel. He assures her that she'll get the package by midnight and that he didn't tell Mary about her. Back at the Sibley house, Mary creates an illusion and visits Mercy as the hag. Despite the poor woman's pleas, Mary forces the familiar into her mouth to regain control over her. Concurrently, Tituba visits John and tells him that Mary granted William access to the ship with the threat of exposing a false affair between Mary and John. This information prompts John to wait for William by the dock. At midnight, William boards a small boat and proceeds to row over to the ship, where he follows Rose's instructions and successfully retrieves parcel 769. In the Hale residence, the magistrate confronts Anne about her attraction to John and forbids her from further pursuing him. The shocked daughter leaves the room after hearing her father's order. As William carries the parcel out of the dock, John orders him to put the box down. The courier recalls the day when John ended many innocent lives but spared his own, and John reminds him of his promise not to see him again after allowing him to live. After strangling William, John disposes of his body among the influenza victims. The captain opens the parcel and finds a mysterious box. Minutes later, Mary sees John as he returns home. The former lovers speak of the vow they made years ago, and the captain asks if they were lies, but Mary assures him they were wishes made by their innocent selves. Before she enters her home, the captain wishes her sweet dreams. After wiping away a tear, Mary stares at the mirror when an illusion of Mercy appears, warning the witch that she's aware of her true nature.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.